friends. Welcome to Bible Basics. It's our third week in our study of David. This week, we learned about how David and Saul were always at odds with each other. Saul was constantly chasing David and trying to kill him, whether it was with his spear or with his army. And at one point, when they both end up in the same cave, and David had the perfect opportunity to harm Saul, he chose not to. He showed mercy. And instead, by doing that, he ended up just cutting a little piece of fabric off of Saul's robe while Saul was sleeping, and was able to show Saul later, "Look, I was this close to you, but did you no harm. Please, can't we come together?" So this week's craft is we're going to be using a torn piece of cloth, much like the piece of cloth that David tore from Saul's robe. And we're going to put together a collage that reminds us of the mercy that David showed to Saul. It's going to end up yours is going to look different from mine, but it's going to be a collage with fabric. So let's get started. What is mercy? Mercy is compassion in action. Have you heard of the mercy rule in sports? That's when a competition ends early if one team is clearly overpowering the other team. Continuing a game when one team is clearly going to lose is simply humiliating. And no one likes to be humiliated. While the word grace means getting something we do not deserve, the word mercy means not getting a punishment we do deserve. Having a heart full of mercy means you are kind and forgiving. When you show mercy to someone who really does not deserve it, you both receive joy. All right, we're going to get started on our mercy collage. And I was just looking at my letters, M-E-R. I tried something different with the C. I actually cut it out, and you can't quite tell that it's a C, so I'm going to use one of Miss Chris's markers and make it look a little bit more visible. That's called a letter that's in reverse. Now, does that look a little more like a C? And then Y. Mercy. All right, let's see what's in our bag. Okay. Wow. So, all of this was into this bag. So those are our fabric scraps. I've given you a piece of newspaper because we are going to make a mess. Isn't that fun? We've got our cardboard that will be our surface to create our artwork on. We've got a little jar that is filled with Mod Podge. Now, Mod Podge is a wonderful crafting glue. I think you're going to have fun with it. And I've even given you a brush. Let's get started. Okay, I think the first thing we should do is cut out our 5 letters, M-E-R-C-Y. And I've given you some fabric that's fairly dark and plain for cutting out your letters. And I have clipped them together. So what you're going to do is think about what you want your design to look like. And also in your bag, I forgot to show you, I've given you a color pencil for sketching out your letters on this fabric. Let me see, there are 5 letters in the word mercy, so pick out which 5 pieces of fabric you want to work on. I think I'm going to do these. And I think I'll do an M here and just sort of sketch it out. And then we'll be cutting it out. And your pencil should show up just well enough on the fabric that it'll give you some guidelines to cut by. How about an E? Let's do the E here.
We interrupt this video to announce that we are skipping to the next step because Miss Leigh lost a film clip.
Okay, I'm cutting out these letters. I wanted to ask you, do you recognize the color of this fabric? Well, you're right. It came from our cloth for David, the color for David. So you actually have a piece of cloth that we've been using in our production for these past 5 weeks. Finish this one, and then I've got one more letter to cut out. And I was going to show you as I'm cutting out this R, because again, we have to get into the middle of that R to make it look like an R, unless you're using a lowercase r, in which case you don't have to. But cut the little legs out, cut the feet of the R, 1, 2. And again, the fabric is to remind us of the fabric that David ripped or cut from Saul's robe. So for this, I'm just going to fold my fabric in half, put a little snip in it, open it back up, and cut the inside of the R out. So that's a handy tip to know. All right, check back with me in a minute and we're going to start gluing. Okay, I've got my Mod Podge glue here on my paper to protect the surface I'm working on. I've got my brush. I've got my 5 letters for the word mercy. And if you don't want to cut out letters, if you just want to use these scraps to form the letters, that is fine too. This is your creation. I've given you lots of stripes of fabric here. Just kind of have to look and see which is the front and which is the back. I've also included a couple of bigger pieces in your pouches. So what I'm going to do to get started is just dip my brush in my Mod Podge and just start painting the background. I'm just going to cover this whole background in my fabric. And you can put as much Mod Podge on here as you want because it dries beautifully clear and leaves a nice protective finish over your fabric. So let's see, let me put down a few stripes. I think I'll start with this floral. How about something like that? And then once I put it down, I'm going to go on and paint right on top of it. So I'm about got my background completed here. Going to put a few more strips on. You can do your background however you please. I'm trying to stick with lighter colors on my background because my letters for the most part are a little bit darker. So that way it will make them a little more readable. I'm putting my darker colors on the edge. So here's a beautiful piece of fabric, but it is a little bit dark. So I'm going to stick it on the edge. And I just love how the different shapes and colors work together. about that. I cut off I shortened one piece and had a little bit left over. So everything can be covered. I've got a little hole there. Let's fill that with. And messy is good. I think it looks good to have it sort of a mishmash of different fabrics and patterns. And like I said, glue on top is just fine. It just seals it in. All right, now that my background's done, we'll get working on putting the letters on. Right, I'm gonna figure out, I'm gonna go on and put a good bit of my Mod Podge glue. I'm gonna have my letters going right across the middle. You don't have to do that though. I can take off my mask. So now I've got a nice sticky place to place my letters. Let's start. Before I put glue on top of them, I'm gonna make sure they E. Let's see, R comes next, I think. That works okay. C and Y, all out of scraps of fabric to remind us of David and King Saul. So guys, I hope you have fun with this. In just a minute, I'm going to show you my finished one. And I'm actually going to trim up the excess around the edges. I wanted you to see me do that. Because once this dries, it's really kind of indestructible. All right, I think I'm through with that. I'll go wash that brush in a second. I'm going to move this out of the way and bring the dried one back out and get my scissors. There they are. And I'm just going to go around the board and cut off the excess fabric. So this will dry fairly quickly, and I hope you enjoy looking at your fabric collage to remind you of how important it can be to show mercy. See you next week.